Hi, to all of you out there on this Coacharya coaching colloquium. I'm going to be a little formal at the start this time, unlike usual, because it was a small kind of community. From this month, we are likely to go global. One of the reasons for this is for the next year's International Coaching Week, we really want to throw this open to a much larger global audience with almost about 500 to 1,000 participants if possible. So gradually we'll be working from now for the next about 6 months to make that happen. And I hope at that point in time, Marcia would also be able to join us again over that week. I'll send out an invitation to her. So Coacharya, as probably you all know, but probably if it's going to those who do not know much about Coacharya, started about 5 years ago. And we are now an ICF ACTP accredited program trainer. We also are accredited by MCC as well as Center for Credentialing Education in the United States. We have graduated over 500 people so far, a credential almost about 400. And we have been given a global award as well. So the coaching colloquium is something that we started as a part of our continuous professional development efforts about 3 months ago during May for the International Coaching Week of 2017. And what we plan to do is to continue this on a monthly basis, and next year probably run 2 sessions a day during the coaching week. So anyone who attends this for that entire year would be able to get all the credentials required for the core competencies for ICF renewal for free. So there are many programs which are available out there for which you have to pay, but we are doing our little bit in terms of the contribution to coaches to make this available for free. So that's about it as far as advertisement for Coacharya is concerned. Today I would like to introduce Marcia Reynolds to you, but before that I just would like to give you the password. And for those of you who may not know, the password is required if you want to apply for the CCEU. So password 1 would be Marcia, M-A-R-C-I-A. I'm putting it on the chat box. And the second password will be given a couple of minutes before we close. So if you send both the passwords, and you must send both the passwords for you to get your CCU credits for this program, if you desire that. Okay, now to Marcia Reynolds, she's a master coach. She was, if I remember right, Marcia, correct me later, you were the 5th chair of the ICF board soon after its inception. And again, you are on the board at this point in time. I didn't know that when I sort of reached out to you. And Marcia has written 3 books, which are going to be, in a way, the substance of our conversation during the webinar today. And they're all about, or at least one of them is fully about how to help people achieve mastery, and may be very helpful for many of you, especially those who are potentially planning to go for your MCC kind of credentials. That's called the Discomfort Zone, how leaders turn difficult conversations into breakthroughs. The most difficult part of coaching in terms of how do you explore, how do you ask the right questions, how do you listen, and so on and so forth about the communication. She has also written 2 other books, Outsmart Your Brain. And I was asking her the book that she did not mention while talking about her books, The Wonder Woman, as different from The Wonder Woman. And she said that was the one which really made a lot of women reach out to her. And I really hope that works with those of you who are listening in, inspire women in India to become much larger force in terms of the coaching community. I really do not want to go much further into this. Marcia, I open it up to you. I would like you to start speaking about whatever you wish to about your books, how they are going to be of help to this audience, which is primarily coaches, coach learners, and master coach aspirants. And as we go along, I would request all of you, please put down whatever questions arise in your mind, any comments on the chat box. I'll keep a watch. So would Marcia, she would try that. And I will, at that point in time, request you to unmute yourself and perhaps ask your questions, or Marcia will, in any case, ask those questions for you. Over to you, Marcia. Thanks.
Okay, great. So when we started talking about this, I was sharing to you what prompted me really to write the Discomfort Zone was really coming out of the work that I was doing with coaches. So I've been assessing coaches for certification and mentoring since the very beginning, since we started certification It's so long ago now, at the end of the 1900s. And I've been teaching around the world, teaching coaching skills for the last 6 years. And I found this very common phenomenon that really good coaches would get their clients just to the edge. They'd ask good questions, and they'd get them right to the point of discovery, of breakthrough. And then the coaches would back off. And I would say to them, didn't you notice the big shift in emotion, or the contradiction in the values, or what they were saying? I mean, didn't you notice that moment? And the coaches always said, yes, we noticed it, but we were afraid that if we said something, that they would feel bad, that they would get angry, that they would have this reaction. And my sense was, yes, that's exactly what you want. that moment of discovery often doesn't feel good when we break through our thinking patterns and we see the situation in a different way. We often realize that what I have been doing hasn't been working, or that I knew what to do all along and I wasn't doing it. That's not necessarily a comfortable place, yet it's the place of breakthrough. And so I decided, I went to my publisher, the company that publishes my books, and I said, I really think I need to write a coaching book about what is breakthrough, how does it work in the brain, and how do we reach that point in our coaching. And he's the one who said, well, write it for leaders because they need it too, and the coaches will buy it anyway. So that's why the subtitle says how leaders turn difficult conversations into breakthroughs, but it's really a coaching book. Well, in my research for the book, I found two things really that were significant to this. One was there's this guy, Joshua Seinfeld, who did his master's thesis on courage and coaching, and what is it that coaches most fear. And what he found after surveying hundreds of coaches, both beginners as well as advanced coaches, that they have these fears of, I don't want to hurt my client. If I say something, I don't want to offend them. What if they fire me? I might ruin them. As my coach for many years always says, nobody ever died from coaching. And so if we stop and we look at, in all honesty, if you ask a tough question, it could either be, no, that's not right, or you might cause that stop, that break in thinking, and that realization that we're really searching for. The other piece of research that I found was that this moment of breakthrough, again, often is uncomfortable, and that's good. Because when we look at how people learn, that there's information learning when you get people to look at things slightly different, and they kind of knew it all along, or they just get in information and they look at options, and that's okay. Sometimes people will decide to do things when they see other possibilities. But if there's any resistance, or there's any fear, or they're defensive and they're really struggling, then there has to be like a breakthrough in that ecosystem that protects us. And what this is called is a disruptive process. And there's many the researchers in decision making that say, in order for people to really see a new possibility, there has to be a disruption in their current thinking pattern. This disruption is best caused by a powerful question. And when the disruption happens, there's often an emotion that's attached. So when you ask me a question that pops through my wall of perception, then I might laugh at myself, I might cry, I might get embarrassed, I might even get angry at you. And then I process it, I see the new awareness, and I basically know what I have to do. If we break through the thinking patterns and open up to a broader awareness, then the client is more likely to change their behavior. Once I see the world in a different way, I cannot go back to my old behavior. If we only stay on the surface and people, they get new information, they see possibilities, a problem-solving approach, that doesn't necessarily change their behavior. Information doesn't change behavior. I mean, if I were to ask everyone here, are there things you should be doing but you don't? Information doesn't change behavior. But when I go in and actually shift the way I see myself and the world around me, and I broaden that, then I cannot help but see myself in a different way and change behavior. So the process of learning through discovery, which is what coaching is, requires us to share, to use reflection, to tell the person, this is what I see, and I see you contradicting yourself, or you had a shift in emotion. So we share what we notice, and then we ask a question. And if those two things then disrupt our thinking, then we have a breakthrough in awareness, which is what we're aiming for in coaching. So all of that being said, is the coach needs to be very comfortable with discomfort. So to know that I might ask a question that's going to cause an emotional reaction in my client, and to know that's good. That's a very good thing, because that means learning is occurring. So in the book, in the Discomfort Zone, I describe how this works, the type of coaching we need to do in order to create this breakthrough, what the coach needs to do for themselves so they're comfortable with the process. And how do we even be that present so we can hear what it is we need to share and the question we need to ask that's going to cause the breakthrough? Because that's actually the third piece, is the deeper listening. And I describe, and you see me do this because it's listening with our entire nervous system, because the nervous system includes the heart and the gut as well as the head, and we need to listen with all three to know what to share and what to ask to create the breakthrough. So the Discomfort Zone is really a breakthrough coaching book. How do we prepare ourselves and then listen for those things to ask, and then have the courage to ask those questions, to make the reflection and ask the questions that will cause the disruption in the thinking, so the person sees themselves and the world in a different way. And to me, if we don't do that, then we're not really coaching, because the power of coaching over all other technologies is the disruption in the thinking process that creates the change. And it's there's a lot of research around insight-based learning, and again, in the disruptive process that creates the new awareness. So it's not just in the coaching world. There's a lot of other modalities that talk about the power of the reflective inquiry to create breakthroughs. So I bring that all together in the Discomfort Zone with a lot of, here's how you do it, in order to create that breakthrough. But I think the piece is to know it requires courage to do this, to stay fully present, and to know that this experience your client is having is good, and not to interrupt it, just to allow the process to happen. So that's the Discomfort Zone came out of what I was seeing the coaches I was working with, what stopped them and what they were not doing. And I felt that I wanted to write research, and I'm very research-based. So I wanted to research, why this happens, how it happens, and then how you can do it as a coach.
Thanks, Marcia. At this point in time, I really feel like I'm watching a TV serial and I'm at the end of episode 1, where you told me that the coach has to be courageous. The coach has to ask those difficult questions. And so the next episode would necessarily have to take people into how does that coach become courageous? So
Yeah.
what is the trick or tricks?
And there's sort of two things. One is a knowing, and one is a being, the listening. But besides coaching, the other thing that I've been teaching for 20 years is emotional intelligence. And I think that coaches constantly have to work on being aware of their own reactions. So when they start to feel a little uncomfortable, or even feel a judgment, like I even know what judgment feels like in me. I feel it rising up when somebody says something that I'm like, no, that's not true. So being aware of the emotional reaction within our body, because discomfort, judgment, which is a little, could be fear, could be anger. All those things happen within our body. That's a biological response. So if I can notice the tightening of my muscles, or my stomach, maybe the back of my head. Some people say they feel it up here. If I know where that is, so I can't tell you where you feel fear. Because we all experience it different. It could be in your head, could be in your jaw, could be the back of your neck, could be up here. But for you to, as a coach, to notice, what does fear feel like? What does judgment feel like? And the moment that I can sense that this emotion is rising up, to take that breath and to release it and to come back and being present. And often I teach my coaches, centering techniques. So anything that teaches you how to put your awareness in your center, in your core, like yoga or a martial art, that to take the breath, clear your mind, and center yourself. So be out of your head and be fully present with your clients. So the first step for coaches is that awareness. And the exercise that I give people is that you should set your phone to go off the alarm like 2-3 times a day for a couple of weeks. And with just the question, what am I feeling right now? What am I feeling right now, and why? So we create the wiring in our head to start being more emotionally aware, because we're taught emotions are bad. And so most of us as adults are very bad at noticing an emotional reaction until it overtakes us. So to notice even this subtle, I'm not comfortable with this, or the stopping, it's the subtle that we have to start being aware of, because it's the subtle really that stops the coach, even more so than the big fear. So step one is to start to notice. So I know when I do demos, especially around the world, I'm often challenged by clients when I am doing demos, and they'll say things that maybe even are a huge hit on my value system. And I just notice it, let it go, and come back and be present. Because as I said to you earlier, mastery in coaching is not an improvement of skills. Mastery is a deepening of presence. How present can I be with my client, with no judgment, with no thought about what's next, but to be fully present and to trust that what comes up, the question that emerges, and what it is that I want to share is going to be there, because I've practiced my skill enough. So it really is about emotional awareness and then releasing that. That's the first step. And in addition to that is to also recognize, which is a big part of emotional intelligence, that there is no bad emotion. We judge emotions that they're bad. I shouldn't feel fear. I shouldn't feel this. as a human, we are emotional creatures, that everything is processed through two emotional centers before it gets to the logic center of our brain. So if you deny your emotions, or you don't want your client to experience an emotion, you're denying a bit of the human experience. And that your own emotion, it just is. I feel fear. Oh, well, I mean, there isn't a judgment about it. It's just a noticing and releasing. I just notice and I release. And then I might think about later, why was I afraid of that? What was happening there? So again, not to notice it, but to think about it and to determine, what caused that in that moment, because then I can learn from the emotion. And the same point is that when my client experiences emotion, I should never jump in and stop them, which I see even really experienced coaches do. Do not soften their emotion. Do not tell them, oh, it's okay. Don't do that. You just hold the safe space for them to experience whatever they're experiencing, and saying, I understand. And so tell me more about what is causing you to feel that way, to help the person to understand what's really going on with them. That's what we're here for. So we have to really start looking at what emotions do I judge? Which ones do I think are wrong? I mean, even anger. Anger is a great motivator for change. Many people make great changes in their life when they say, I've had it, it's enough, and I'll show them. And so can you channel the anger into what it is the person wants to create? What's the change they want to make? And so again, not to be afraid of the emotion that's expressed, but to honor the human experience and be curious about it. So we have to start again recognizing our own emotions and releasing them, and then honoring that whatever the person's experiencing is just what they're experiencing, and that the question we ask can trigger their emotion, and that's okay. That's truly okay, because it helps them to learn. I mean, I've had clients like scream at me. I had this one woman, and I just asked her about an impact of a decision she made, and she just started screaming at me and yelling at me, and she even hung up on me and then called me back. So I have to be okay with that, and that's a big part of mastery as well, is to ask the question anyway, even though it can cause a reaction. We should never be afraid. I mean, if the person's going to fire us, oh well. I've never had anyone fire me. They've gotten mad at me, but they've never fired me over a question I've asked. So, and I could be wrong, and that's okay too. So it really is, watching our judgment over this. I think getting over fear is not just recognizing and releasing the fear, but understanding that we have judgment about what's going on. And if we can release our judgment, we'll release the fear.
Before I take you into what I would call the third episode, there are a couple of questions here where the questioners would probably require some answers. The first one from Murugan, the question is, when you say discomfort, is it the same as uncertainty?
Discomfort often, not necessarily, it can be. But oftentimes it is just the opposite. So, like, let me give you an example of something that happened to me. I was complaining once to my boss about, and I was a typical high achiever. I do really good work, and I work very hard, and nobody else works as hard as me. I mean, this is a common complaint of high achievers, right? And they don't know, and I should have the most acknowledgement, and they're slackers and they don't work hard enough. And my boss said to me, wow, it seems that everybody disappoints you. And at that moment, that reflection made me go, oh, it made me stop. And there was a little uncomfortable feeling in that is that what I'm doing, as I was starting to process. So there's a little uncertainty, but then he came in with the question. He said, will anyone ever be good enough for you? And at that moment, it's like it just opened up. And so there was a realization that I had been doing this to all my relationships. I was holding people to super high standards. I had these expectations, and this was keeping me from being close to them. It was hurting my relationships. It's like I had this huge explosion of realization. That made me embarrassed. That made me angry. I couldn't even breathe. And in fact, I even said, wow, I have to go think about that. This put me into process for a few days because it was something that was huge for me. So yes, there's an uncertainty, and then there's a knowing that may feel not so good in that moment, because I'm recognizing something that I have been doing that had been sabotaging my relationship for years. That recognition doesn't feel good, and it was exactly what I needed in order for me to see what I needed to do going forward to establish better relationships. So when I ask these questions of my clients, oftentimes, there's a gasp, a pause, and then that realization of what they need to do next doesn't necessarily feel good. And so when I say discomfort, it sort of encompasses the whole range, starting with uncertainty. It's like, wow, I don't know, all the way to, oh my God, look what I've been doing. And I have to change. So, and that doesn't feel good either. So we just hold the space for both uncertainty and then a knowing that doesn't feel good. And it's that knowing that leads to the change. Like the time I was coaching a CEO of a chemical company, and he was really wanting to be more present and have a great impact with his employees. And so he had been working on that and how to shift his emotions and be present in the moment. And then one day he came on the call, and he nonstop for 5 minutes went into complaining about everybody. His administrator is awful. She's missing things. She's making mistakes. The employees aren't grateful. He does all this work for them, and they're just not happy. And everybody was awful. And when he stopped, it was so overwhelming. And when he stopped, I just asked him the question. I said, wow, it seems like everything is going wrong right now, and there's nothing that makes you feel good about your work. And he stopped, and then I said, so tell me just something. Is there anything right now going on in your life that makes you feel good, that makes you happy? And after a long pause, he said to me, and I had no idea this was coming. He said, oh, well, I just need you to know that it was a year ago I got divorced. And ever since then, I've been doing nothing but working. And I'm not doing anything I like to do. And nothing makes me happy. And I said, well, okay, then. And I really didn't have to say anything. I just said, is there just one thing that you're really missing in your life that could make you feel a little bit better? And he said, the one thing I miss terribly is dancing. I love to go dancing. Again, I had no idea. I was not trying to delve into his personal life. But he shared that, because what was happening was that he was so focused on work that there was no balance. There was nothing. And he just overdid it. And so he said, yeah, I do. I want to go dancing, but let me think about it. And I just left it there. I didn't need to have anything else but a commitment that he was going to consider what he wanted to bring back into his life. He called me a week later, said, I need to cancel our next coaching session because I'm going on a cruise and I'm going dancing. And I said, bravo. Because he needed that balance to give him more perspective of what was going on. Was it comfortable in the moment? No, not for him or for me. And it was the exact question that I needed to ask him. He could have said, no, it's none of your business. That's not what's going on here. Fine. And I would have said, okay, fine. It's just that I was sensing there was an imbalance. That's all. And we would have moved on. But that was the question that emerged that I wanted to ask. So, so I'm noticing there's a lot of questions in the chat box.
There are a bunch of questions. First of all, let me say on behalf of the audience as well, we love the energy with which you are relating your experience and you speak. It makes a huge difference in terms of how involved you are when you are describing what you're describing. The next question is from Nitin. And I would add a supplementary tag to it. He says, when you explore emotions and the client says, I do not know for most of the exploration, what do you do? The question, the tag that I would like to put onto that is, maybe the client doesn't say that too, and he's in monosyllabic kind of form, and there's nothing left for you to move forward. So what do you do?
Okay. Well, first, let me just respond to I never ask the question, what are you feeling? Because most of us are not emotionally literate because we've been taught emotions are bad. We don't even know. It's like I say, how are you? You say fine.
Can I interrupt you for a minute, Marcia? When you say most of us, I think it refers to all men.
Yeah. Well, but let me just say that women in the workplace have been, kind of dealt with too. It's like, don't you cry, don't you show emotion. So just as a side note for women, what I was taught to do, which really works, is that whenever I had to go into a board meeting with all men, that I took my box of Kleenex with me and I set it on the table and said, sometimes when things get out of hand, I might cry. Don't you worry about it. I will handle it. And you know what? They never questioned me again. We show strength with our crying. So women are taught to, if you show emotions, that people are going to not take you seriously in the workplace. So we're bad. It's been bad for us as well. So the thing is that, and so because we don't know how to talk about it, if you just say, so what are you feeling? Most people will say, I don't know. So what I do, and again, you're going to see me do this because I've worked really hard to listen with my gut and my heart, because that's when I pick up, what's an emotion. And I don't always know what it is, but I will say, wow, your voice got really low, and I heard some sadness there, or some disappointment. Can you tell me about that? So, like, I had a manager who was trying to figure out how to demote somebody, and he was afraid she'd get angry. And in the middle of this, he just he dropped his voice and he said, but I thought she was going to be the one. And then he came back and said, so it's just really hard, and I just don't know if I can do this. And I stopped him. I said, can you, just stop for a second. For a moment there, you dropped your voice and you said that something about she was going to be the one. And I heard some sadness. Can you tell me about that? And then he says, after a long pause, he said, I'm afraid I promoted her too early. I wanted so much for her that maybe she wasn't ready. I said, oh, well, do you think you need to maybe put that into your conversation with her? And it changed his whole thing, because he was really afraid he'd made the wrong choice. And that's why he was avoiding this conversation, even more so than her. I mean, she may not even ever have wanted to be a manager, and he never asked her. So it changed our conversation. So when I say notice, you notice yourself, but you notice, one of the best things a coach can do is just to say, I see this shift in emotion. And this is a part of your competencies. And at a PCC and definitely an MCC level, you must notice, what is the experience the client has beyond their words. So just to say, I saw that you made a shift there, or your voice got low, or you got really angry when you were talking about that situation. Just notice there was a shift in your emotion, or I'm sensing that you feel this. And no, you can be dead wrong. But if you say, I'm sensing that you're sad, and they can say, no, that's wrong. But then the next thing they'll say is, what it is this. And what's happened is you've just allowed them to really go in and say, what's going on with me? So you encourage the process of self-discovery by guessing what they're feeling. And no, you can be wrong. So you offer them, I'm sensing this, is that correct? You make the invitation. And you allow them to reflect on that. That's far more powerful than just saying, so what do you feel right now? And they have no idea. So, yeah.
So what I hear you saying is, number one, when the client comes back with, I do not know, it's more about the way the coach is asking the question. And perhaps the coach takes the courage to, even for the client to contradict him by asking a question where he might say, you are wrong, that's far better. So we go to the next question. This is from Sunita. She says, what do you think a coach should do when they can relate to what the coachee says unconsciously, though not consciously? What could have an impact on the outcome of, which could have an impact on the outcome of the conversation?
Yeah. Well, it sounds to me that you know the answer already to that, and just the way the question was written, that we have to be very careful about identifying with the client. And I do it all the time. Like yesterday, this woman was going through this, she's a big picture person. She doesn't do detail. She loves having new projects. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, me too. I don't do details either. And I have to let that go, because then I'm going to start thinking what I did, and I'm going to want to offer her a suggestion. And so to really do coaching, it's the same thing as noticing an emotional reaction, is just noticing that I'm identifying with my client, and what's it going to take for me to come back and be present. It really, again, you see me do this because it's so much easier to stay present and out of judgment with clients when you're not in your head. This thing here can really mess up the coaching. And so it's not that I don't think, but we have to trust that when we open up in our entire nervous system, that you're smart enough that the right thing to ask and the thing you want to share is going to come forth. You don't have to analyze it. And there's a lot of research right now going on in therapy, in the therapy field, on what's called therapeutic presence. And they've been researching this with trauma patients, that when the therapist fully opens their heart, and you open your heart with compassion, with gratitude, with that feeling of I'm so happy to be here, that feeling of an open heart. And then we open our gut with courage, with remembering times in our life where we activated our courage to speak up. That when we open our gut and our heart, as well as our mind, free of judgment, that they're finding that there's this energetic loop, that the person that they're in therapy, this trauma patient who's never spoke of the trauma in their life, that when they are with a therapist who has a fully open heart, gut, and mind, they feel safe. There's a sense of psychological safety that's created, that all of a sudden they start speaking of a trauma that they've never spoken of before. And so if we take this psychological safety into our coaching, like people always say to me, wow, I never felt so safe in talking to someone about this stuff. It's not that I have something special. It's that I work really hard before I sit down to open my heart, open my gut, and free my brain of judgment, of thinking, that they feel safer to open up and to share with me. So there's research and where they're actually measuring, an energy exchange. and starting to be able to measure presence. So what I'm speaking of is not like woo-woo. It's an actual, it's actual, processes we can do. Not easy, but I learned in public speaking that I don't speak from my head. I should know my information and what I'm going to say before I get on the stage. I speak from my center because that's my point of strength. I speak from my heart because that's how I connect with people. So I learned years ago from improv acting. Actually, I took a lot of improv acting classes to get out of my head and be with my heart and my gut. Well, now I'm just taking it to coaching so I can be fully present. So even at this moment, as I'm speaking to you, you're talking about my energy. I'm not thinking about this. It's like, it's what I have learned and what it is that I want to share with you. And so the more that you can really work on opening up this entire nervous system that's fully connected by one nerve and is constantly talking to each other. And I know a lot of people will say, isn't that the chakras? Well, yes, it is. And there's many modalities that have taught us about being fully open from our gut, through our heart, through our head. And if we can do that with our clients, it's amazing. And then just say what comes forth. And no, you can be wrong. And they'll say it. And you go, okay, great. So tell me more about that. It's just the process. And that's how we stay curious. And without out of judgment and out of projection of, oh, I've been through that. Let me tell you what I've done that we never want to do with our clients. I mean, I might say, yeah, I understand. I've had that experience, but I leave it there and then move on. So, yeah.
Marcia, I'd like to just stay with this question, though there are a number of others who have asked questions, because it's from what you say, two things come up for me. One is that trust the intuition, and therefore ask whatever is necessary, be courageous. That's pretty obvious. The second, when you talked about even physically, that you were talking about the chakras, the heart and the navel chakra opening up, as it were, in terms of asking that, in terms of expressing what you said, the ha kind of stuff. So would that itself, in your experience, open up the client without any verbal expression?
It's amazing. I believe that to be true. I don't know of any research where we've done this with coaching, although I've suggested it to the ICF that we really need to look at this. But if you were to Google therapeutic presence, you would find tons of research. And this woman, Sherry Geller, is actually creating a measurement of presence. Which I think that's what the MCC is. It's a measure of our presence. That there's something amazing that is created in the energy between. So, emotions aren't just energy within our body. It's energy. We also release this energy. And this energy we've been able to measure our emotional energy for years. The Heart Math Institute. It's a lot of noise.
Yeah, there's somebody out there. Please mute yourself. There's somebody out there. Sujata, is that the noise coming from you? You're not muted. Oh my God. Okay. Sorry, you carry on, Marcia. I'll try and mute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, for years they've been able to, they've done research where they would use heart monitors and head monitors, EEGs and EKGs, and they would measure like two people in a room and the impact of one person's emotions on the other without them even looking at each other. And they have found direct correlations. So we know that emotions have energy within our body, but also energy that's projected out. And there's different wavelengths of emotions. So anger is very dense, compact, and you feel it. Where happiness, gratitude, love is very lightweight energy. So if we know that emotions have energy that's projected out, well, why wouldn't we think that it has an impact? And we also know that, like in leadership, the brain responds to the emotionally dominant person in the room. So I'm going to pick up, if you're my leader, I'm going to pick up what you're feeling, and I will either take on your emotions or I will rebel against it. It's the same thing in a coaching relationship. You're the socially dominant person in this relationship, even if it's a partnering relationship. My brain sees you as coach. I'm going to pick up what you're feeling, and it's going to have an impact on me. And so this is why it's really critical that we as coaches understand what emotions am I bringing into this? What is it that I want to feel in this moment? And know that whatever I'm feeling is going to impact my client. And if I want this to be the most positive experience, then I do want to be aware of again, where am I feeling my emotions? And so again, fear often ends up, it's very gut related. And so can I open up my gut with courage? Can I open up with my heart with compassion? Those are emotions I want to bring into coaching anyway, and they're going to have an impact on the person. So I always say, be curious and care before you even go into any coaching conversation. If you can, fully open your heart and your gut, great. But if anything, can you shift to being curious and you care? And every time you feel when you're coaching, like, oh, I have a judgment, or I'm a little uncomfortable, to come back to those feelings. And so for me, I'm a very gut-based person in my life. And so for me, the harder thing is opening my heart. And so when I get stuck in my coaching and I'm not sure what to say, I go to my heart. What's my heart saying at this moment? Because that's my point of vulnerability. But a lot of coaches I deal with, they're very heart-based people. And so they have to go to their gut and really open it up and release their fear and just share. So I teach, and if you go on my website, outsmartyourbrain.com, and you hit the discomfort zone and look at the training materials, you're going to find a visualization on how to open up your head, your heart, and your gut. And because when I train coaches, we do this exercise and we open their heart and we open their gut. And then I say, okay, ask the first thing that comes to mind when you listen from your gut. Ask the first thing that comes to mind when you listen from your heart. It's just an exercise. And it's amazing that they ask these things that they wouldn't have asked from their head. So if you look at the exercise, you can use it in your coaching, but you can also use it with each other. So, how I do it is I first have my coaches just open up your mind with curiosity and ask questions from an open mind. So they listen for a minute and they ask questions. And then I do the visualization and I have them open their heart. And I say, okay, so listen for another minute. Then I stop them and I say, so what comes forth? What question do you want to ask from your heart? What's really interesting is the question from their brain is always far more analytical than the question from their heart. And then I say, okay, so let's just go down. Let's just focus on the gut. And so I do a visualization, the part of the visualization where they open their gut. And then I say, okay, now listen for a couple of minutes just from your gut. And then I stop them and say, so what's the question you want to ask right now? And the questions are often very different. And I say, the point is in coaching is not to just use one. The practice is, can I be fully open from my head, my heart, and my gut, and just, and notice what's the question I need to ask right now. This takes practice, but when over time, you just get used to coaching from that place, and it doesn't take a consciousness unless you're stuck. So like I said, I get stuck, I ask my heart. So to be able to do that, when we learn coaching, we learn the skills. And so an ACC is very much, okay, and at first I have to find out where we're going in the session, what do you want to accomplish? Then you ask the questions that you memorize, you think are really good, you move them into action, what are the options? And that's great, but it's very surface. And as we move into the PCC and definitely into the MCC, it's listening beneath. It's listening for beyond what is the problem they're stuck in and what are the options they perceive. What's stopping them from being able to get to this place they want to go? And remembering that coaching, I love the ICF definition of coaching. It's a partnership with a fully whole, creative, resourceful person. So if I trust that you are fully whole, resourceful, and creative, then the best thing I can do is to ask you the questions to see why you can't see the answer. Because I trust that you can, but something's stopping you. What's stopping you? So my coaching is about what's stopping this fully whole, resourceful, creative person from knowing what to do. Not me telling you, but that you're fully whole, resourceful, and creative, but something's getting in your way. What's the block for you seeing the answer on your own? So the deeper that my reflection and my questions can get, so you can see your block, is what's going to allow you to see what it is you need to do. And that's what makes coaching better than any problem-solving technology that's out there, because we get into the block that's stopping a person from seeing the way forward. And the coaching is about right there, staying right there until they can see it for themselves. And that's what's so powerful as a learning technology. And again, I've been researching behavioral change and learning since the mid-1980s. My second master's degree was in adult learning. And when I found coaching, I'm like, oh my God, this is the technology that's going to make the difference when somebody's stuck or resisting, is that we have to ask that question that makes them look at their own block. And it's Richard Boyatzis, a neuroscientist, who said, we cannot see beyond the box until we actually see the box. In coaching, when we share what we notice and ask the question about it, we help the person see the box. And then maybe they get a breakthrough in that box that they can see beyond it. So we don't want them to try to see what's beyond the box before they actually see the box. And that's what we do when we coach. And not necessarily comfortable process. When I finally see my own box that I'm living in, it's like, oh my God. But that's what we're aiming for.
It's amazing, Marcia. I just have to say this to you. As went to part of your experiences, you look absolutely radiant out there. It is beautiful. Thank you. So there are two questions before we finish. We just have time for those two questions, I think, quickly. One is, Murthy is asking a question that it's important to maintain positive energy to discover and explore. At the same time, this whole thing about disruption, etc., to bring out that. And how do you balance the two? And there's one more question.
You know, I don't tend to call it positive energy. I call it being present and believing in the person. Sometimes I may even get, you know, like if someone keeps cycling around, I might even feel my own impatience. And you know, so I might even say, you haven't answered the question I've asked you this 3 times now. You keep running off over here. Tell me what about that question that's making you run away or avoid it. So it's not necessarily, you know, a positive question. I'm not a full believer in the, oh, I have to have, you know, energy and hope and excitement. I'm sharing what's occurring in this moment. So it's really more about presence, but I believe in my client. I believe that they're a fully whole, resourceful person that can resolve this. I never lose that. So my belief in their potential and that they can do this is the most important sense. And that they keep avoiding it. It's like, what is it that's keeping you from being, you know, totally present to your own situation? So again, I think that that's the most important thing. But, I don't want to stay there. So again, it's the breath, it's the breathing. The moment that I feel my own discomfort or impatience or that energy, breathe. So remembering that the breath relaxes the body, and it's the exhale, and not so much the inhale, it's the exhale. I breathe, clear my mind. So again, it's like, I did a lot of research, 20 years ago with professional athletes on how do you be present in the moment of when you have to do your best and everything's riding on you. And they told me it's not about positive thinking, because the moment that you think, oh, I have to be a winner, or I have to do really well, your brain thinks about the opposite. So the athletes told me it was about clearing their mind and centering themselves, being very much in their center, their point of strength. And then to anchor on, if you're going to anchor on an emotion, what is it you want to feel in this moment? And my sense is, I do love my clients. I do care about them. So that having an open mind and curiosity and care. So I come back to curiosity and care. And to me, that's positive. And that's the emotions that I want to carry with me.
Fantastic. What you're basically saying is positive is not being mollycoddling, but in the client interest, if you have to challenge the client, you can challenge the client, and that's what leads to the outcome. The other question, the last question that we have time for, is a question from Mohan. Sometimes I choose to look away from the client's eyes or even close my eyes, just to reduce the compulsion on the client to respond instantly. How does one use gaze effectively?
All right. Well, for one thing, most of my coaching is over the phone. But, it's an interesting thing, because I believe that I've experienced it, that if you're truly curious and you care, you're going to do the exact right thing that's needed in this moment. That for every moment that you're thinking about, oh, should I be looking at them, or how should I hold my hands, or am I open, am I closed, you are not present. And so I don't believe that teaching body language is helpful, because it takes us away from being present with our clients. So if you're with someone and you're curious and you care, and you're going to sense that for a moment I might look away, just to create a safer space, that maybe they're just being too much. You're going to sense that, and that's what you'll do. And I do this in my teaching all the time. I say, I have my coaches think about, what's going on and what they want to do. And then I say, okay, let's just be curious and care. So I want you to listen for 2 minutes, just feeling curious and care. And then I stop, and I say to the client, I said, so what changed with the coach? And they said, well, as soon as they got into feeling curious and care, they turned at me, they looked at me. It's like their nonverbals were perfect. And I always say, you don't have to think about your nonverbals. If you put yourself in the emotional state, you're going to do the right thing. So if you're curious and you care, and if the person's being too intense, you'll probably, give them some space and look away and then come back. So don't be thinking about, what am I supposed to be doing? Because then you're breaking your presence in the moment.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Marcia. Thank you very, very much. We are pretty much on top of that. It's been a delightful experience, and I'm sure everybody would agree with that. And just for the rest of the audience, I just want to say a couple of things. One is the passwords are Marcia, M-A-R-C-I-A, heart and guts. So that was the heart of what she said today. Marcia, heart and guts is the password. And for those of you who are probably new, please go to the website, Coacharya, http coacharya.com. There's a page on programs, and within that there is a page, there's a section on Colloquium, Coacharya Coaching Colloquium. Please enter these passwords and request for your CCUs. And I'll be posting the next event by about the 1st. And so please go there and register as well, and you'll also be getting the mail. And once again, Marcia, thank you very much. And we say namaste. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank
All the
you.
best. I'll be sending you the recordings. Bye.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.